and she's from Mozambique. But interestingly, Chidinma was born in South Africa. So there's what we call citizenship by naturalization, which could have also played out for her. But interestingly, the fact that she's, of a Nigerian descent, the father is from Nigeria. But the good news to this story is because the organizers of the beauty pageant in Nigeria, which is Silverbird, has extended an invitation to her for her to participate in Miss Universe. But it's important for us to talk about this because the lessons as regards identity, the issue of citizenship, nationality, and then, the kind of ethnicity or division that plays out many kind of stories in the public domain. It's important for us to draw out these lessons for people to learn better.
There are a lot from the Chidinma Adetshina case. Yeah. There are lots that one can pick from it. If we'll start from the very beginning, how she got into the pageantry, Miss South Africa. Okay, let's even start from when people started raising eyebrows as to say, hey, what's this Nigerian girl doing in Miss South Africa? So, for every pageantry, there are requirements that qualifies any contestants to participate. Some can say height, some can be size. It could be origin, depending on the kind of pageantry. So I'm assuming that for this same one, such requirements were there. It had to be like, you must be a South African. If, for instance, you want to contest for Miss Nigeria, then it goes without saying that you have to be a Nigerian. And then there are also age limits to these things. You could say not older than 25, not younger than 18, such requirements. I don't know exactly what the requirements for this competition was, because it was a competition that was kind of inclusive in its nature, given the winner, the eventual winner of the pageantry, someone who's has hearing impairment and all of that. So if we now go to, where's she from? Is she a South African? Is she a Nigerian? Generally, when a person is born in a country, by virtue of their place of birth, they automatically are citizens of that place. But whether it's different in South Africa, whether there are other dynamics to it, we'll get to find out from our legal practitioner. A legal practitioner will be joining us in the conversation. Is not the only one. There's also someone who's involved in organizing pageantry, and he has experience in this. So let's have a legal practitioner talk about this. Let's also have someone who has, who's an active player in the pageantry world to give us some insight on what could have played out, what are actually the real issues here. And now that Nigeria has extended an invitation to Chidinma Adetshina to come participate in Miss Universe Nigeria, the land of her father. Yes, she's of Nigerian descent. So let's hear from our guest what the issues are and what are likely going to be the implications of this. Will it translate to some discord between Nigeria and South Africa at the end of the day? Let's find out. So Adeyemo Dolakwa Richard Esquire is a legal practitioner and is alias a celebrity lawyer. He'll tell us why he has that alias, by the way. And then also joining the conversation virtually as well would be Smart Courage, who's a fashion work consultant, artistic director, fashion stylist, and personality development coach. First, welcome, celebrity lawyer. Good morning.
Hi. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
And Smart Courage, good morning. All right, to bring in Smart Courage later, but please tell us why you're called celebrity lawyer.
It's just a nickname from a couple of friends, because I've over the past few years I've had to be involved in representing a couple of high caliber individuals, and I've been involved in a plethora of cases that include a number of individuals that are celebrities. So they're like, oh, maybe I only represent celebrities, and so they started calling me celebrity lawyer. It's also it's actually a threat from my dad. back when I was in secondary school, he used to tell me that he didn't want me to be a charge and bail lawyer, that he wanted me to be a celebrity lawyer. So now that I'm grown up, everyone just gives him the satisfaction of calling me a celebrity lawyer. Yeah, I don't think he saw it coming.
I think it makes a lot of sense that
Thank
you
you very
are a
much.
celebrity lawyer, so that means that, yeah, you're the right man for this conversation. Looking at what played out in South Africa when a young lady of Nigerian descent who was born in South Africa, according to reports available, so got into the Miss South Africa pageantry, but somewhere along the line, there were calls, there were clamor as to why should she be there? What is she doing there? So a lot of issues erupted. So the South African Home Office did some investigation and then came up with some allegations that there were issues of identity theft traced to her mother. And Chidinma, reason given was that for fear of a family's safety, had to withdraw from the competition. So she withdrew from the race even after getting to the finals. What's your take on this situation? First, I want to ask, when a person is born in a place, does that give the right of citizenship? Is it any different in other places, especially a country like South Africa?
Thank you very much. So, naturally, there are three methods of acquiring citizenship in any country. And I think there are only a selected number, a handful of countries who do not include citizenship by birth. I think it's only the United States that has taken that out. That has taken that out. I think, and that's not even all the states in the United States. There are three major ways of becoming a citizen of any country, including South Africa. It's by nationalization, by birth, or by descent. So naturally, a person can become a national of any state that they are born in, or they have stayed in for a number of years and thereby applying, which is naturalization, and maybe by marriage. So these are the three major ways in any constitution of any country that an individual can obtain citizenship or can be deemed a citizen. Thank you very much.
All right, good to see you again, celebratory lawyer. I love harping on that name, which is quite good. Now let's look at this from this angle as a follow-up to the introduction you just made now as regards to citizenship by naturalization. Now the information out there is that Chidinma's mother has also obtained a citizenship by naturalization. Uh, Perhaps, will it have made any difference if this has been done quite all right? And then for the fact that the lady in question was born in South Africa, we're not too sure if she had applied for citizenship for naturalization. But if she has done that, will it have made any difference as regards the perception of not being a legit South African?
Absolutely. So from what I understand, the Chidinma issue came up as a result of something her mother did wrong. I think a document that her mother misrepresented to be deemed an identity theft. Irrespective of that, I think there are two principles of application to law. There's the common law principle and there's the equitable principle. Now, the common law principle of it would say, oh, she's not a citizen because she hasn't gone through the process of naturalization. However, the law is made for the man and not the man for the law. So, because we believe this, whenever there is a lacuna at law, then I think what should be resorted to is the equitable principle. Now, Chidinma was born in South Africa from the facts that have been circulating, irrespective of what her mother has done wrong. By birth, by virtue of her being born in South Africa, by virtue of her having most likely schooled in South Africa for a number of years, and I believe she is above 18 years old. So she must have been in this country. She must have stayed in this country for a period of at least 13 to 15 years, which is usually the standard for even adults who intend to naturalize into a country. That's Nigeria. For you to become naturalized to be a Nigerian citizen, you must have stayed in the Federal Republic of Nigeria for a period of 13 to 15 years. Now, for the virtue of her parents being residents in South Africa, paying South African taxes, she attending the school, I think that was enough for them to take up the principle of equity, as equity sees what ought to be done as done, and get her to go through the due process of naturalization, which shouldn't have stood her, like gotten her out of the entire competition. I think removing her from the entire competition was rather harsh and a more of a common law application to the principle. Besides, from what I understand from a bit of research into the process of naturalization in South Africa, there are procedures that must have been gone through for a person to be deemed not naturalized, and there are procedures to go through to become naturalized, which she could have initiated at the point where these people began to notice all of these things. Thank you very much.
All right, so let's begin from the entry point for this kind of competition. If you followed while I was talking with Michael and before we brought you in, that for every pageantry, there are requirements, there are entry requirements. Some state age, some state origin, as well as it depends on the kind of competition. But for a national pageantry like this, I want to believe that part of the requirement was that you must be a South African, as well as other requirements like age and maybe size and the rest of them. So at the point she picked the form and went for audition, and then she got into the competition, she became a contestant. What does it say about the organizers? Does it mean that they didn't check even the name? They did not raise a flag that perhaps this person has a Nigerian descent or is not, doesn't have a South African ancestry. Did that not raise the question of, let's dig up to be sure that you are a South African for you to participate? How did it become an issue when she has gotten to some level in that pageantry?
Well, you see, these exactly are the issues. First of all, I want to strongly believe that they must have taken documents from her to verify her citizenship. And the name, beautiful indication, the name. First of all, I even, over the past few days, I've been seeing some interviews that other citizens have been brought in to give, and the opinion on the streets of South Africa, the general opinion poll. And I've come to notice that the pronunciation of her name has even been South Africanized, if I'm allowed to use the word. She's not called Chidinma. She's called Chidinma Adetshina. The spelling of the additional is no longer Nigerianized. So it all boils down to, what does it mean to be a South African? Because I believe she has a South African passport, and I believe she submitted documents that allowed them to let her enter the competition up until this point. Now, it all boils down to the one thing that the South African elites hate to admit, and it is xenophobia. I want to absolutely blame her mother for two reasons. Number one, first of all, in the event that she deemed this child to be a South African, or she intended for this child to be a South African, I think she should have given her a different first name. That wouldn't have raised such a red flag in any instance whatsoever. not just even for the pageantry, but for the fact that she wants this child to be deemed a South African. I think she should have taken out her South African first name and should have entered this competition with her South African first name, and with her Nigerian first name, Chidinma. That is where I think all the flags go off. Second of all, I think there is generally too much hate on Nigerians because it all boils down to her being a Nigerian at all. Because having gotten to the point of finals, then they want to go back and bring a preliminary issue that has already been scaled. It is the competition and her mother that sincerely have the actual blame, because her mother shouldn't have allowed her to have the Nigerian first name. I mean, she can't say she's oblivious to xenophobia that has been existing from time immemorial. And the organizers of the event, the pageant management, who accepted her without maybe doing certain due diligences, for that reason of permitting her to exist up until this point, I think they should have themselves to blame for it. So it's the real problem we have in this thing is not about documentaries or processes that have not been completed. No. However, it is mainly because of the Nigerian first name that she has and last name too. I mean, I understand that this has happened to some other person, I think a Mozambican, who was also kicked out of the competition, a pageantry as well, because they discovered some sort of her roots. And I think they discovered that it was her mother who was South African and not her father. And then they got her pushed out of the pageant as well. It's very, very appalling because in sports, I know citizens of other nationalities who probably haven't done all the due processes are allowed to compete as maybe be on the team of South African football players. I mean, we have Bukayo Saka playing for the United Kingdom, and nobody is outraged. I'm sure it has never sparked an outrage that Bukayo Saka is the important winger for England, but let's go and check if he's really an English person because he doesn't deserve to take penalties for us if his father has not done all the documentation that is required. I don't think that is relevant at all. I think she identifies with South Africa, and for that singular reason, she should have been permitted to complete that competition. She identifies more with South Africa, and whatever wrong has been alleged to have been committed was committed by her father, by her mother. And so, in the eyes of law, the offenses of one cannot be met out against another. Chidinma Adetshina did not commit any fraud personally. If there was any discrepancy in her documentation, I think the government should have better managed the situation by getting her to do the necessary procedures and rely on the principle of equity sees what ought to be done as done. Because if we go into the records, I'm sure we will discover that she has done and existed in South Africa as good as any other South African individual. So, sins of the father, is that how the Bible says it? I think in this instance, it's sins of the mother. Thank you very much.
All right, you were almost answering my next question, but let's still go there for people to understand better. Now, this alleged act was perpetrated in the year 2001. Then Chidinma was just a minor. She's 23 years old now, barely a few months old then. Now, according to the eye of the law, this kind of alleged identity fraud or theft might not directly be linked to her. And I would like you to shed more light on that. Now, in this situation now, she's in the eye of the storm as we speak. She's the one being affected by this development. And this thing happened 23 years ago. Now it's coming to bear now, holding this gap perhaps to ransom. What are the lessons here when it comes to the issue of documentation, paying attention to details? Because the essence of this conversation is to draw up some lessons for people, to learn from this case study and not make the same mistake. So what are the lessons here as regards the issue of documentation, something that happened 23 years ago, and it's coming up, not just to affect the mother alone, it's also playing out as regards the career of the lady in questions. What are the lessons here?
Beautiful. I think the lessons here are very, very obvious. First of all, like I said, the real person that should take most of the backlash here is her mother. I think having known what she did wrong those number of years ago, she should have, I don't know, maybe put mechanisms in place to right that wrong, or she shouldn't have allowed her daughter to fly this close to the sun. Generally, like I said in answering the previous question, there are procedures that are necessary to go through in naturalization that a person can do even while they are being deemed citizens. She has stayed in South Africa for this long. She should have been deemed a citizen by the state. To be honest, irrespective of anything that we want to say at law about naturalization, documentations, or double checking if your documents are valid, or maybe doing the extra due process to be conferred a citizenship, I think the only reason we're having this problem is because the country in question is South Africa. Very simple. The only reason we have this issue is because the country in question is South Africa. And I would also include our government in taking the blame for what we are experiencing with South Africa. There are hundreds, let me say a number I can defend. There are hundreds, over 100 South African companies thriving in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And I think in every sector that they are one of the best. In telecommunications, we have MTN. In other, in entertainment, we have MultiChoice. And they go on and on and on and on. We have ShopRite, we have Costa, I think Costa or something, one of these stores. They have another chain of stores in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And we do not give South Africans any special problems. DSTV is allowed to exist to the detriment of our own local channels, and we don't give them any problems. I think we as Nigerians too should start putting measures in place, I don't know, to maybe love ourselves better. I think the real issue we have in Nigeria is we don't take up our own thing. We don't own our own productions, our own inventions, our own innovations. We don't celebrate it as much as outside innovations. And look at how we're being treated in the outside of the country. I mean, there's only so much to say in this situation, I think, because the country in question is South Africa to another country. I think the appetite that the South Africans suffered didn't just scar them. I think it also scarred them to the point of loving any other outsider. I think all they love is themselves, honestly, because this issue, I don't think would have gotten this detrimental even if it happened in the United States of America. Because in the first place, she probably wouldn't have gotten to this point of the competition. And if she should have gotten to this point of the competition, I think they would have done the due diligence at the initial stage and told her, okay, before the competition begins or at the point of submission of application, they would have advised her to do the due process that is required. And the most important thing that anyone ever looks at for you to even start a process, and before we can even apply the principle of equity, is how long have you stayed in that country? Now, a person hasn't resided in the country for a number of years. I mean, we have Nigerians now applying, even from Nigeria, to get permanent residency in Canada. So, even while you're in Canada as a, let me say, as an immigrant staff, and you're working in South Africa, in Canada, and you begin the process of permanent residency, even when you are conferred permanent residency, you already begin to enjoy the benefits of a citizen before you are given a passport. So all of these things are no-brainers as to what a person needs to do to be documented. They are no-brainers, they are non-issues. The only issue in this scenario is South Africa being South Africans. That's it. Very simple. Thank you very much.
All right, let's get to the apartheid situation that you said perhaps did a number on South Africans. So the winner of the Miss South Africa pageantry 2024 happens to be Maya Leroux, someone who is of white South African descent. Her family have been in South Africa for generations, but their roots traces to Dutch settlers that arrived in South Africa centuries ago. Looking at it, it was quite easy or quite acceptable for a white South African to emerge as the winner, as opposed to allowing someone of Nigerian descent but born in South Africa to continue in the pageantry. Now, looking at Nigeria's response to it, maybe one would have expected some form of reciprocity. But Nigeria chose to invite Chidinma to participate in Miss Universe Nigeria. What do you make of that? Is that like, okay, that's a private response, we should wait for the government, or that is better for Chidinma at the moment? Can she even seek legal redress?
I'll start with the aspect of legal redress. No, she can't seek legal redress. Absolutely not. I don't think so. I think all she can do is, I think, yes, she can seek legal redress in terms of the distress that the pageant has caused her, because maybe it will be deemed a failure on their part to have overlooked certain things that they overlooked and permitted her to go through this whole process, and only for them to let her out. Even if she attempted to drop out, I think the pageant should have taken responsibility for doing all that is necessary at the point that the outrage began. Because from, like I said, I've been not necessarily following, but I've been hearing about the issue. And what I've noticed is that I think the citizens have been calling her out for a while. And I think that is, at the first instance of call, I think the pageant should have done the needful to manage the disaster, to manage the crisis. So I honestly want the pageant, as well as the mother, the pageant should share the blame. Now, bringing it to Nigeria and whether we should have reacted differently. First of all, I would like to commend the Nigerian pageantry that invited her in, because that is what I would expect us to do. I think that is part of the healing process. Is we should always take up our own. We should always love our own as much as we love the outsiders. But one thing you would come to notice, I'm sorry that I'll digress a little again, is Black people, us Africans generally, I think we should learn to love ourselves. Yeah. I want to commend the Nigerian pageantry for adopting her and admitting her. Fine. South Africa has rejected you. Come home. Not necessarily like the prodigal son, but come home. We accept you. But in response, that is not enough. I think that's just 50% of what needs to be done. The other 50% that needs to be done is us developing our own innovations and accepting our own innovations. Because I think if MultiChoice and MTN were struggling to catch up with maybe Soup News TV, if they were struggling to catch up with Glow and Etisalat, I think they would naturally even incline their own people to behave better. They would sponsor ads to teach South Africans to treat other people better, because they need their businesses to thrive in these climes, because they are suffering great competition in these climes. So I think the second aspect of the action that needs to be done by Nigeria is to begin to develop our own. It's because these countries know that as much as they need us for their profits and interests, we also need them for our existence. I mean, if we had better innovations running our own system, that our own national pride. I don't think anyone will be able to kick us around like that. Now, bringing it to Black people and generalizing it a little more. I think this saying that nobody hates a Black man in the presence of white people like another Black man keeps playing out to be true and correct. I've had a personal experience of being in the same setting with another Black person and a white South African specifically, very recently actually. And the white South African literally says, I hate these N-words. And I know I might not be permitted to say the word, but he used the N-word in referring to a couple of other Black people who had just done something, and it was like, I hate this N-words. And I had to caution him and say, I don't think you're allowed to say those words, to refer to these people as that. And I don't think you should continue to speak that way. And he was immediately closely defended by the Nigerian in that setting for calling us the N-word. Now, we as Africans, Black people generally, we need to accept ourselves more. I think we need to stop believing that white is better and Black is bad. I think these are the things that it will all boil down to. It is the general orientation of the people. Because now, a person, so that from what I gather from the information you just gave in this question, in this segment of the questioning, is that the other person who also won the pageant is also an immigrant. But because she's a white immigrant, is fine. Because she has finished her documentation, is fine. But the Black immigrants cannot represent South Africa. It goes to say a lot about the people and the spirit of the people, honestly, because it is what the majority push for. It is what the streets clamor for. It is what the masses clamor for, that the government will be forced to implement and respond to in the event that they have a responsive government. I also want to add that the fact that she has entered the Nigerian competition is not enough. I think she should be compensated by the pageantry for the distress that she has been put through. I think that's where she would have means for legal steps to be taken. That's where she would have recourse for legal redress. Thank you. It is for her to be able to be restituted for the distress that she has been made to go through in the event that they didn't do what they were supposed to have done. So it shouldn't have been hard, because she was not even an adult and she couldn't have been conscious of the things that have been done wrong at the time. So these are things that could have easily been overlooked, and quietly for her to have been put through the due process that is necessary. Because again, I would say it, equity looks at what ought to be done as done. Thank you very much.
Right. As a lawyer to celebrities, let me put you on the spot now. I want us to do some kind of permutation and combination here now. Now, as regards our identity, nationalship, or citizenship, will you expect her to claim to be a South African or a Nigerian? Given the latest development, the invitation that has been extended to her to contest for Miss Universe Nigeria, and then what kind of obligation are you expecting from Chidinma and her parents as regards her nationality, her citizenship? Another angle to this is if she emerges as Miss Universe Nigeria, people can also come up with another angle that, hey, she was born in South Africa, or she once claimed to be a South African. What kind of obligation are you expecting from her and her parents as regards tidying up documentation or processing of her citizenship? Would you advise her to claim to be a Nigerian or South African with this development? It looks dicey, but as a lawyer to celebrities, what would be your opinion?
Right. What country a person wants to claim is their personal prerogative. So I can't advise her on which country to claim or which one to drop. I think, first of all, it is up to her to make her own decision, having attained the age of maturity. I think it is up to her to be able to decide that, oh, she wants to be a South African or a Nigerian. I mean, having seen how both countries have treated her, it's a no-brainer on which country to pick. However, a lot of, as well, I remember in the middle of this question, a lot of the backlash that she's getting comes from the fact that she actually loves Nigeria and she promotes a lot of Nigerian products. Now, it might be unfair from what I'm hearing. There are also clamors that it's unfair that she's being made to enter the Nigerian competition. She has accumulated a lot of sympathy and popularity. To be unfair for the Nigerian competitors. Well, in the eyes of law, common law, she's not a South African. She has to be from somewhere, and it looks like she's Nigerian. She has to revert back to the country because this other country has rejected her. Now, if she's a Nigerian, I think she has every right to compete in a Nigerian competition. And so I think that answers that. A person should have the right to say, I feel I am a Nigerian or I feel I am a South African. So honestly, I can't advise. I can only state the obvious, that look at how one country has treated you and look at how this other country has treated you. I mean, she had to pull out. It's not the competition that kicked her out, which is their saving grace for her making legal actions against them, even though she can still demand. But it wasn't the competition that asked her to leave. Nope. It was the need to secure the well-being of her own life. So she does not trigger a war or a riot or an uprising, so she can protect the well-being or the safety of her family. She had to pull out. So it just goes to speak to how the country, because the country is its people. Yes, the government is the power holding sector, but the country is a reflection of the spirit of the people. And I think I wouldn't want to be the citizen of a country where I am being made to be pushed out at the peak of the glory moment. So it's strictly up to her to decide what country she wants to adopt as her own. But from what South Africans are angry about, I think she is more of a Nigerian than any other thing. Thank you very much.
All right. So bringing it to Nigeria and even South Africa and other countries and at other levels where pageantries are organized, what should be the lesson to learn here? A time ago, it happened in Nigeria that there was a contestant, a pageant contestant, who, after getting to a certain level, I think the crown was even given to her. It was discovered that she had she was older than the maximum age limit at that time, and so that became an issue. That should be Miss Nigeria competition. So, for issues like this, to protect the contestants so they do not get into a pageantry or a competition, and midway there are issues as concerning their eligibility, what should organizers of pageantry do to ensure that whoever is enlisted, whoever is participating, meets the requirements? Thorough scrutiny to protect them and not to cause disruptions like this, whether it's Nigeria, it's South Africa, anywhere else in the world, or even within a country.
All right, thank you very much, Leslie. So it's like this. To be honest, like I said, the real problem is because the initial country where the pageant is happening is South Africa, and the competitor now happens to be a Nigerian. Permit me to say this before I begin to answer your question. I once propounded a theory to someone that we Nigerians, we are the modern day Israelites. We are the chosen people. We are the special people. We excel in every country we go to. We're the best at everything we do, except they don't allow us to participate. Yeah. Now, in entertainment of all kinds, we're leading in the world. In business of all kinds, there's an element of a Nigerian in a successful, thriving business. I just want to say that, and I am proud to be a Nigerian. I love my country. Now, let's move it to pageantry and pageants. In instances like this, like I said initially, it's starting that the only reason we have this problem is because it's in South Africa and Nigeria. It goes to show you how irrelevant nationality is. Because if it was when it became relevant, the truth was discovered. So there is nothing new for pageants to learn. If it was truly relevant that certain things are put in place, then they would have been discovered and they would have been allowed to enter that competition to that stage. So it goes to say that should it going forward, I think, which is why her mother again being made to always take the backlash. It is her mother's prerogative because she knows a guilty person will always know what they have done. Yes. And now, in the event of that, it is that, oh, my daughter is becoming a star. Certain things are going to be made to brought to light. The moment the person is flying close to the sun, they should know that everything is going to be illuminated about them. So she should have done I apologize. She should have done the necessary of filing due documentations to at least push the process of naturalization such that it would be deemed ought to be done and done in the eyes of equity. So it is for maybe pageants, competitions to take seriously the things that they believe would be material to being deemed a bona fide winner. Because if she had won the competition without all of this outrage, I think nobody would have cared to know that, oh, whether her naturalization process was completed or it wasn't completed. That wouldn't have been the problem. It wouldn't have been a problem at all. So, yes, scrutiny to what is necessary and what is valid, what is relevant and what is actionable. I think more scrutiny, more effort should be placed into that scrutiny on the part of the competition. And on the part of her parent as well, I think her mother, should have done what is most necessary to have gotten her properly documented as a citizen. Thank you very much.
Quickly, let's do a spotlight on the Department of Home Affairs in South Africa, because that's another angle to this story. Now, you observe that this alleged identity theft wasn't discovered until 23 years after. Now, I did a research and I come across allegations of corruption against this agency as done by the Public Service Commission, where you have allegations of people who were arrested for their IDs who were used fraudulently. Now, this comes to bear and question as regards the issue of control. Talking about that department, this is just like an eye-opener for the Department of Home Affairs. If something happened, allegedly happened 23 years after, and they are not being discovered, and given the allegations of corruption against this agency, what would you expect from the government of South Africa as regards doing a spotlight on this department?
Like I said, if you observe, the only reason that we're having this issue is because she has a Nigerian name. And they have always hated on Nigerians generally, if we have to say the truth. The South African elites will never admit it, but that is what it is when it comes down to it. Now, putting a spotlight on the Department of Homeland or the Home Services, honestly, like I've already said, it wasn't really relevant, because if it was relevant, then it would be at this point of the competition that we'll be doing all of this, permit me to say, shenanigans. Going forward, I think on the issue of corruption generally being reported up to these agencies, I can't make any comments on that right now, because I don't think those are matters that have been proven by any court. I don't think those are matters that have been, I think they're just mere allegations. Several allegations, yeah, but allegations, I mean, as they are called, are just allegations, and they are not, so to say, criminal charges on the agency. So I would honestly not want to make any comment on these allegations of corruption whatsoever. The main focus is on this subject matter of Chidinma being bona fide to compete or not. And it's only that way because she's of Nigerian descent, of some sort, with a Nigerian first and last name. And that is the only problem, and that is the only offense that Chidinma has committed, being associated with Nigeria, being associated with foreigners inside South Africa. Then, worst of all, being associated with Nigeria. Terrible, terrible mixture. Thank you very much.
The report also has it that the South African Home Affairs Department is still conducting further investigations with the aim of pressing criminal charges while also obtaining legal advice on the implications of the alleged fraudulent activity on additional citizenship status. So does that mean that should they conclude investigation and then there are evidence to prove that Chidinma's mother actually did commit the crime of identity theft to further citizenship claim in South Africa, criminal charges will be pressed. Where does that leave her mother in this? Can she
responsible for her actions?
The wrong, if there is a wrong.
Okay. Yeah, it leaves her responsible for her actions. It must be deemed, if it's deemed true at the end of their investigations, because at this time I hear that the Department of Home Services has stopped making public comments on the subject matter. Well, if it is deemed that her mother has committed a wrong, then she'll be responsible for it. And if it's deemed that she hasn't committed a wrong, then it will be that Chidinma has been pulled out of the competition unfairly. But then again, it won't be the first Nigerian that is being treated unfairly in South Africa. So these are the issues. She only pulled out, like I've admitted here, she only pulled out because of how she fears the safety. And I commend her for pulling out, to be honest, because if she had stayed true to this competition, I think we would have experienced another strong wave of xenophobia. And I sincerely commend that she pulled out from the competition. It shows that she is not a selfish person who thinks of only herself. It shows that she put her family and her country and other Nigerians in South Africa into consideration in making this painful decision of pulling out of the competition. She could have stayed true to it and said, all of them, like they are allegations, no necessary pronouncements on any wrong that has been done, but mere allegations that, oh, this has happened and that has happened. And she did not commit any of these wrongs. Her mother, on the other hand, if truly she's a South African citizen as well, will be made to, answer to the law, to be responsible for her actions. I'm sorry about that. I sympathize greatly with her, but in the words of a very wise man, it is what it is. Thank you very much.
All right. Let me quickly chip in this as regards the perception of Nigerians, given this development in South Africa and looking at this story and the case study. I'm looking at the aftermath. What would you expect from the Nigerian government in handling the perception of Nigerians in South Africa and even the obligations expected from Nigerians who are residing in South Africa as regards this perception?
I think the only person that has any job to do is the Nigerian government, like I've stated earlier. It's for the Nigerian government to look more into developing our own national treasures. It's for the Nigerian government to, we don't necessarily have to pay them back on their own coin and stifle businesses for MultiChoice and all other South African businesses. No. The truth is, it just goes to show that we depend too much on them because we really don't have any actions to take that will twist South Africa into behaving properly. We are too deep in bed with DSTV and MTN. And if we had our own national treasures developed, I think they would value and treat us better. But we have gotten to the point where it looks like we're fully dependent on South African companies to give us our groceries, South African companies to give us our entertainment on television, South African countries to give us to help us to communicate. So even the South African corporation and the government look at us as their babies. Meanwhile, we're actually their big brothers. We're actually very, very involved in getting them their independence. So it's more an assignment for the Nigerian government to develop our own treasures. I mean, we've been crying out about this. I learned just yesterday, very beautiful that we're talking about this today. I learned just yesterday that DSTV premium is in the hundreds of thousands now. I think DSTV premium is more than the minimum wage. So, I mean, look at that. Look at that. So we need to develop our own thing. We need to do more internalized building. I like that we're not responding on their own coin, but more than just maybe accepting our own, I don't want to say prodigal child, but I think what we need to do more is develop our own national corporations, our own entertainment, our own telecommunications. Any other country would give favorable conditions to its own national companies to be able to thrive and develop and compete with foreigners. Only in Nigeria would you see that we will make it hard for our own and then help out a foreigner to do very well on our own soil. So it is more to us. You must say it's more about us to ourselves. Because like I said, nobody hates another black man like another black man. A white man does not hate you as much as a black man hates you. And it's what it is. It is really sad, and it is what we need to work on. We need to love ourselves more. We need to love our own innovations more. We need to grow Nigeria. We need to grow the Naira. Thank you very much.
Adeyemo Delakpo Richard Esquire, we thank you so much for the insights you provided on the issue today.
Yeah. On a final note, I would like to say this. In the spirit of pageantry, my niece, Vanessa Omoroga, is competing in Miss Teen. Go Vanessa, Team Vanessa. Thank you very much.
All right, because it's a Friday celebrity lawyer and because you are a personal person, we won't send a charge for that.
I apologize.
All right, we wish Chidinma Adetshina best in her future endeavors, whether it's Miss Nigeria, Miss Universe Nigeria, or other modeling business. We wish her well, and we want to say to Africans that Africa can only be where it should be when we look beyond the divide, look beyond what has been used or what we use to divide ourselves. At the end of the day, haven't you seen videos of people from other continents when they're asked, where is Africa? They refer to Africa as a country. Do you know Africa? They talk like Africa is just one place, meaning at the end of the day, they do not see Africans as, oh, you're a Nigerian, you're a South African, you're a Ghanaian, you are from Niger, or you're Mozambican. They just see all from Africa as people from one place, and they refer to Africa as a country, though it's a continent. So that should give us some wisdom to know that the earlier we begin to get things right with ourselves, love ourselves, and not spite ourselves, the better for us all.
Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.